was in the hundreds. And recently JEA published their numbers for last year. I think 2011, there were 26 events. And I think that how they got there is really twofold. One, they knew that the public, Riverkeeper and others, were going to hold them accountable for these events. And to their credit, they spent money to repair a system that obviously needed work. And so, you know, Jimmy, I think there's always much more to this than is it a win or a loss.
Right.
But I always tell people we always win. And the reason I say that, not to rationalize it, we never lose. We lose a lot. But when citizens, when you watching this show stand up and say, these are my resources and I don't want to see them polluted, I want to see them protected, that ultimately is a victory for long-term thinking.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And those are just good examples, I think, of how Neil has been so effective in taking a situation, I think, in putting pressure in some cases on some of these agencies or the JEA
right.
or whoever it may be to do the right thing. And I think we've seen progress because of that.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you know, not JEA, they have a huge system, as Neil
right.
said, so there are bound to be problems that happen.
Right.
But it's our job to make sure that those problems are addressed
right.
in a timely manner, and also that they don't happen. We try to eliminate them if
right.
we can.
Right.
And so I think that's where we're seeing progress.
Right.
Neil, tell me a little bit about, you know, maybe there's a something that you would like to, your legacy. In other words, how would you like people to remember you and your tenure as the St. John's Riverkeeper? I mean, just simply, what is it that how you would like people to think of you once you step down and pass the torch?
Well, I always, you know, what I hope people remember is, you know, I always tried to do what was right for the river. And, you know, I have said recently, Jimmy, to a lot of people, I never tried to let any of this become personal. You know, I'm sure I've said things through the 9 years that have offended people. But what I've tried to tell people is it was never meant personally at them, that what I was trying to do is what I felt like was my job. And so I hope people remember me as someone who sometimes offended people, not personally, but saying things I think that needed to be said. And hope I instilled in people a sense of ownership and responsibility for taking care of the St. John's River.
Well, and I think too, Neil, you know, from my perspective, you always said you sort of, when you took this job, you took it as an oath that you
yes.
were pledging that you were going to represent the river and the public to whom it belongs.
Right.
And you're almost like an elected official in some way, that you were representing
right.
more than yourself, a
constituency.
constituency. And,
right.
I think from my perspective, as someone who loves the river, even, you know, outside of just as a private citizen,
right.
I think you have been a valiant champion for the river.
Oh, I appreciate
and
that.
The way I'll remember you is somebody that always stood up and said what you felt like was needed to be said and what was right. And we always joke in our office sometimes that Neil was sort of the guy that saw things black and white. It's either wrong or right,
yeah.
good or evil. And
right.
I always could see a little bit of the gray areas a little bit more
right.
than Neil, but I think Neil has always been, you've always been the conscience of our organization and keeping us on track and making sure that we're focused on our mission. And that's something that myself, as somebody that will continue working for Riverkeeper, hopefully for some time to
sure.
come, that I'm going to always keep that close to my heart, that I know, that I'm always going to remember Neil in my mind, and whenever these decisions come up, and make sure, are we doing? And
right.
so we're going to carry it on and continue your
right.
legacy and make
right.
you proud, Neil, too.
Well, you know, Jimmy, I say to people, you know, when I came to Jacksonville, a lot of people didn't realize I did not, when I decided to move to Jacksonville, it was not to be the Riverkeeper. It was to be with, you know, a woman who is now my wife, Nan, and in a way, I kind of look back and think it was divine intervention or fate or something that I came here. Almost this was a calling, and through the years, the community has been so good to me and to my family. that what I would hope people will continue to support St. John's Riverkeeper, whether it's me and we have a new Riverkeeper. And just, I think the support and the commitment this community has shown us is, I would ask that everybody watching this will continue that. I said that last night when I was speaking to the mayor and council of Green Cove. They, through the years, we've not always agreed on everything. But I think, most elected officials realize taking care of the river is what their constituents want. Right. So that's what, my kind of request to people is to continue the support of this organization and really to the mission, which is, Jimmy, we've said this. I've never felt like we're totally building just an organization. We're building a movement to make the St. Johns River better, make it healthier for our kids and our grandkids, and make it something that this community realizes first and foremost is the most important resource this community has. Yeah, and I'm encouraged. Right before Christmas, I was able to go out on a boat with Mayor Brown. I think he understands the value of the river, and I think he will be committed, as Mayor Payton was, to kind of carry forth the city's commitment to improving the health of the river.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you, the thing that I can tell you too, from my experience working with Neil, is Neil and I didn't always agree with everything, but it seems like we had a little bit of different perspective, but we always kind of came to the same place. And one thing I can tell you is that I always knew that whatever Neil was doing, there was no question at all whether he truly believed this was what was necessary and best for the river and nothing else. And so I always felt like, there was never a doubt about what Neil's motives were behind any of his decisions, and that really helped drive us. And then Neil and I worked so closely and so well together, frankly. I mean, you can only imagine, especially when those early days, we're in one room together. There's not even a closet in this room.
Oh, yeah.
And we were looking at each other across those desks every day. And it's just been a joy to work with you, and I appreciate all of that. One thing I want to ask you too is, about challenges. Looking back, for you, what were some of the greatest challenges, and then what do you see as some of the greatest challenges for the new Riverkeeper moving forward?
Well, I think, I look back and honestly, some of the same issues that Mike was dealing with, we're still dealing with, and the new Riverkeeper. Nutrient pollution. We've talked many times on this show. Sadly, through the years, we've put up photos of the green monster, blue-green algae blooms, toxic, fish kills, foam, all of that. Certainly the algae blooms are related to overuse of nitrogen and phosphorus. And, Jimmy, we've made progress. Entities are reducing nitrogen and phosphorus, but yet today, the legislative session is beginning, and we're still fighting to protect local fertilizer ordinances. For example, this community worked about a year and a half to develop fertilizer ordinances which helps us as consumers and homeowners reduce our impacts. And yet you think, okay, we put all that effort into that, and here we are today because there's going to be efforts in the legislature to overturn that. Water use, we talked many times on these shows, the great water wars, and they're still ongoing. Right now we're hearing reports. We just received a report from a supporter today who was in the Silver River, which is Silver Springs, and talking about how low it was. And scientists from the University of Florida, I think, told you he'd never seen it this low. The water withdrawal issue is certainly not over, but I think we as an organization elevated that level of discussion. One of the proudest things I remember, I think it was in 2008 or 9, over 400 people attended, in some cases tried to attend a public hearing in Palatka to defend the St. Johns River against water withdrawals. And that was the largest. I don't think we'll ever see another hearing. Well, hopefully we will see another hearing like that, where that many people feel strongly enough about the river. You know, if I could say one, I think something that has improved, when I first took over, sediment pollution, runoff from construction sites was rampant. And that's less, obviously there's less development, but I think through the years, citizens, with the help of Riverkeeper, kind of made sure that people were doing the right thing. But none of these issues will ever go away. There will always be a need for St. John's Riverkeeper to educate people, and in the last instance, defend the river against whatever threats it faces.
Well, I think that, yeah, absolutely. This is a long-term campaign.
Absolutely.
And as you mentioned, Mike Hollingsworth, the original Riverkeeper, and then you and now Lisa Reineman will continue, as you pass the torch to her, she'll continue that march towards a clean and healthy river. And this is a campaign that will outlive all of us, probably.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think I do think we're on the right path. Neil, you've put us on. Well, Mike started it, and you continued and really built on the work Mike had done to start the organization, and done obviously a great job. And I think Lisa will continue to build upon what you have accomplished, and will continue to do great things in the future. I think, you know, you're right. We have made some progress. I think sometimes that's part of the hard thing that we all deal with, is that it seems kind of hopeless at times, because it doesn't seem like we're making that much progress. But you mentioned the construction site runoff. I also mentioned bacteria in the creeks. I think that was something that Mike actually started, a campaign, and you continued. And now we see in the latest river report card for the lower basin of St. John's that they saw a little bit of improvement in some of the bacteria problems.
Yeah, we have tributary assessment teams that have identified programs to address that. So yeah, Jimmy, sometimes we're close on it. You don't always see progress, but yes, I would say in 9 years we have made tremendous progress, and we're moving forward.
Well, and I always tell people when I talk to them, and you start, you know, tell them about some of the statistics and the problems, and you can see them getting sinking down in their chair, and they look kind of depressed and like, wow, they're losing hope. But not to lose hope, because the thing about our rivers, there's still so much life and vitality and beauty that we have not passed that point of no return. There is still an opportunity, a good opportunity to restore the health of the river. And I appreciate all the work you did, Neil.
Thanks, Jimmy.
To make sure that the community focuses on that need and is moving more in that direction than ever before. I see a lot more momentum around the river than I've seen in the past. I am a little discouraged, obviously, a lot discouraged by what I'm seeing in Tallahassee and the legislature, and trying to roll back some of the protections, the safeguards that we have for our water resources. But I do see hope at the light at the end of the tunnel, because I do feel like the public is starting to become more aware. And you've been one of the main reasons why there's so much more awareness in an engaged community.
Well, you know, Jimmy, I would encourage people to continue watching this show. I know next month's show we'll have our new Riverkeeper, Lisa Reineman, and I would encourage people to stay involved, and I appreciate everything that people in this community, their knowledge, their commitment, and just want to say to everybody, thanks very much for everything.
Well, Neil, we thank you. And I have to say that, in my opinion, Neil, you are not only probably one of, if not the greatest champion for the St. Johns River we ever had, you're one of Florida's great community leaders and advocates that we've ever had in this state. And that is not just focused on the St. Johns. And you really helped build a movement, the movement you talked about. And we're going to keep it going, Neil.
Good. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you, and thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you next week with the new Riverkeeper, Lisa Reineman.